Friday the 13th, one of the most beloved and revered franchises in all of horror, known for its gratuitous debauchery.
You want a beer?
Or do you want to smoke some pot?
Or we can have premarital sex.
Over-the-top violence, and an iconic family of villains. As I've come to learn throughout the various entries, there are an overarching set of rules that the Voorhees family appear to abide by when on their streaks of mayhem. So hold on to your butts, because it's time to do a deep dive into the original from 1980 and figure out exactly what the rules are to surviving Friday the 13th. We will be discussing each and every death in the film, so spoiler alert, even though it is over 40 years old. Why you would be watching this and never have seen Friday the 13th, I don't know, but hey, you do you. Live your best life. The first victims of the Friday franchise are Horned Up Counselor Number 1 and Horned Up Counselor Number 2, or as I've come to learn after doing some research, they actually have names, Claudette and Barry. After the most provocative version of Hallelujah ever sung, these two sneak out for a bit of...
Looks like he's gonna enter the Holy of Holies, coitus uninterruptus.
Before getting rudely interrupted for a bit of slice and dice. This leads us to the number one rule of Friday the 13th, keep it in your pants. Bear in mind, these are the two very same counselors who instead of watching over Jason when he drowned, instead snuck off to make whoopee. So it makes perfect sense they were targeted for revenge by Pam Voorhees. If they had kept it in their pants, they would have most likely avoided a gutting and prevented decades of murder. I don't know about you, but instead of Doc and Marty spending their days in 1955 making sure two teenagers banged a gong and got it on, they should have gone back to Crystal Lake in 1957 and stopped these two teens from slipping ye old hot dog in ye old bun, saving hundreds of lives. Next up on the cutting room floor is Annie, who despite having limited screen time gives off ample final girl vibes. She's kind to animals, has a strong desire to work with children, but don't you dare call them kids. She even manages to resist breaking rule number 1 by spurning the advances of everyone's vote for sexiest soothsayer, Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
So where does Annie run afoul? She breaks rule number 2, do not hitchhike. While this will turn out to be one of the least broken rules of the Friday films, if you ever find yourself out in the countryside, be sure to keep that thumb in your pocket unless you want to end up stumbling and bumbling through the woods before getting your throat slit. Then we have Ned. Oh, where to start with Ned? He definitely walks the line with being a creeper, doing the old pretending to drown so he can steal a smooch from a pretty girl trick, but we're going to let that one slide. What we can ignore is him breaking rule number 3. No one likes a clown. Ned is often cited as the first instance of a Joker character in a slasher film, so all throughout his run in this movie, he's doing stupid things such as shooting an arrow at a girl in an attempt at being flirty and doing, well, this.
Oh shit.
Yeah, shit idea. It's a shit idea then. Still a shit idea. Didn't age well.
Yikes. So yeah, make as many jokes as you wish, but in the end, a Voorhees is going to end up getting the last laugh. Next up, we have a couple's death with Marcy and Jack, the only pairing that has an official relationship, so we all know what rule they end up breaking. But these two lovebirds are also our first double rule defiers when they break rule number 4, no hanging with Puff the Magic Dragon. For all you out there unfamiliar with the Peter, Paul, and Mary jam, I'm talking about...
You know what I mean? Would you just get off a spaceship or something? Colombian gold, man. Grass, hash, the weed, dig it?
Now we clearly see Jack light up a...
marijuana cigarette.
Before getting an arrow plunged through his throat in one of the more iconic kills in the series. But we never explicitly see Marcy toking. However, from a small piece of dialogue later in the movie...
Why don't you see if Marcy left any of that grass?
Some may just say it's a throwaway piece of dialogue. I say it's rock-hard evidence that all the snickle fritz circulating around camp was brought by Marcy, so it's pretty safe to assume she was hanging with Mary Jane at some point during her time at Crystal Lake. You know, before the whole axe to the face thing. Victim 7 is Brenda. Now, as we saw earlier, she suggested busting out the devil's lettuce, so we already know she's passing the doochie upon the left-hand side. But we have one for that vice, we have to have one for the drinkers out there too, as she can be seen with a beer, so count her down for breaking rule number 5, stick with Shirley Temples. But there is one more violation Brenda commits, making her a triple offender. Rule number 6, use your brain. There are certain times in movies that you just look at the screen and want to yell, "What the fuck are you doing?" Take, for example, exploring a murder pipe in Jeepers Creepers.
Okay, you know the part in scary movies where somebody does something really stupid and everybody hates them for it? This is it.
Or in The Evil Dead, where you open a book wrapped in barbed wire and read words aloud that you don't understand.
No! You must must not read from the book!
In Friday the 13th, Brenda hears a childlike voice calling out in the distance. Going out in the storm of the century and investigating, that alone is enough to make me raise my eyebrow, considering there are no children at camp right now, but fine, I'll roll with it. What makes this a use your brain situation is after she wanders into the archery range, the lights suddenly burst on. At this point, you should only be thinking one thing.
It's a trap!
This is clearly a nope situation. You should be booking it out of there. You don't just stand stationary looking around frantically. Follow the advice of all-time great Patches O'Houlihan and be sure you
dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
That is, of course, unless you want to have your lifeless body thrown through a window during the third act. Death number 8 is camp owner Steve Christie, and oh my god.
Oh, hot. Want to touch the hiney.
This movie needed a little sex appeal. Now I have a theory that makes Steve a 2-time rule breaker, but we'll get into that a bit later when we discuss Alice. What we do know for sure is that he tends to be a bit overbearing.
Alice! Just want to get this tree stump out. Get on this side.
That's right. And after lunch, Brenda, I want you to finish up the archery range, okay? Now, if Annie gets here, get her started in the kitchen.
Oh, I want him to start painting right away. What about Brenda?
You told her to go set up the archery.
No, I'd rather she paint. Well, come on, let's go.
So new rule number 7, if you are an authority, don't be a dick. To be honest, it's possible that him being a jerk butt was actually worth it considering he gives such epic dying face. I haven't seen a face like that since, well, my Dennis Miller similes are slacking right now, so feel free to leave your best joke in the comments, internet. Friday the 13th's final non-villain death goes to Bill, who we already confirmed broke rules 4 and 5 during that fateful strip Monopoly game. Hands down, his most grievous sin was committed earlier in the movie, however, when Alice spots a snake slithering around her cabin, and he bursts in like some hillbilly commando and machetes the poor harmless bull snake to death. Now it's time for a Friday fun fact. That was an actual snake that was killed. Apparently the producers did not inform the snake handler that the actor was actually going to kill the animal, and the handler became...
I'm insane with anger!
It has been said the handler was inconsolable and had to be restrained. So let this be a lesson to you kids. Be sure you don't break rule number 8. Be nice to animals, or else this will happen to you. Now it's time to discuss Alice, our final girl. Or should I say, final ultimate rule breaker girl.
Oh, sick burn.
By my count, she has broken 4 rules, more than any other character in Friday the 13th. We will start with the obvious breaking of rule number 4 and 5 during the board game of death. But now let's backtrack to a bit earlier when I said we would revisit the second rule Steve Christie broke. It's never clearly stated in the movie, but it's certainly implied that there was some sort of romantical type of relationship going on between him and Alice. Now, upon doing some research, I discovered that in the novelization of the film, she is involved in some sort of love triangle involving herself, Steve, and some guy named John across the country in California. When she mentioned she wants to leave Camp Crystal Lake near the beginning of the movie, going to John is a probable destination. Steve knows this and convinces her to stay a few more days. All of this is just one long way for me to say that I believe Alice and Steve are definitely having a... For the last offense, let's just count the amount of times that she incapacitates Pam Voorhees.
Look what you did to him!
Now, I ain't got me no big city college learning, but I'm pretty sure if there's been a maniac running around killing all your friends and you have them on the ground, you bash their fucking head in. This is a obvious violation of rule number 6, use your brain. When you have the bad guy down, you finish the job. You don't go tra-la-la and run around aimlessly. I believe that the incomparable Weird Al summed it up best when he said,
I want you to take this crowbar and just bash my head right in. Go ahead, really, please. Just bash it right in.
Let's take a good look at all these rules Alice broke in Friday the 13th. In my humble opinion, she should be deader than a doornail, and it is a minor miracle she made it out alive. Let's just hope she doesn't push her luck and makes this her only encounter with the Voorhees family. Hold on, everybody. My producer is blowing up my phone. What's that baby video, producer? Who's in part 2? Alice is in part 2?
Oh, boy.